Hi, I'm Victoria McMahon, and I joined Create a World about a year ago. The Create a World team formed some years ago from a listening of how we are in conversation. The team recognized how we find ourselves at a pivotal moment in human history, a period of time where there is new energy, new data, it's new everything. This world that we can use to build awareness within ourselves and in the world of which we're a part. Conversation invites us into what is possible. Is it possible to live and thrive in a world in which all beings know and feel a part of everything else? Conversation also invites us into sharing who we are and how we are with one another. It gives us a way to be with each other.
We need to stop. We need to stop. Somehow it's not crossing over. Sorry, sweeties. No idea what just happened. So just hang on a second. Sorry.
I'll breathe.
It says it's doing it, but it's not.
It's a good warm-up.
I must not have practiced enough.
Okay, so if we're on live on YouTube, I am now going to also record it on Zoom so that we have it both ways. And I checked it and it didn't show up, but go ahead. We'll fix it another way if it doesn't. Do it this way. So go right ahead.
Okay.
Continue. Actually, start over.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria McMahon, and I joined the Create a World team of collaborators about a year ago. The Create a World team formed some years ago from a listening, how we are in conversation. The team recognized how we now find ourselves in a pivotal moment in human history, a period of time where there is new energy, new data, new everything rising, a new way that we can build awareness within ourselves and within the world in which we are a part. Conversation invites us into what is possible. Is it possible to live and thrive in a world in which all beings know and feel a part of everything else? Conversation invites us into sharing who we are with another in the world. It gives us a way to be with each other, supporting ourselves during the chaos of these times, while exploring and building a new reality. Asking questions, being curious, and not knowing the answers opens us up into being a through line with each other. This is what is behind Create a World. I and others are here to live life's moments with you in one medium that is shared across all human life, conversation. Today, I welcome you into conversation with Erin LaBelle. Erin is a storytelling artist who uses the camera to evoke contemplation and create social change. She studied fine art, commercial photography, and photojournalism. She's worked in newspapers and magazines and facilitates reconnecting with self-other through coaching classes, public art exhibitions, and workshops. I met Erin through the Athens Photo Project, which is a community where expressive photography is offered as a tool in mental health recovery journeys. Erin believes self-expression, creativity, story sharing, and service hold the power to heal, to connect, and create forward momentum. Currently, she listens with a camera in the Dyersville commercial as a reporter, photographer, telling stories of small town Iowa, post-pandemic. The majority of her articles focus on health, spirituality, and creativity. Welcome, Erin. It's so wonderful to be in conversation with you. You definitely have a myriad of ways of being in a listening. I'm curious to begin the conversation in hearing more about how you listen with a camera.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and it's great to see you, Victoria. And hello, everyone. So listening with a camera, let me see where to begin. It's have so much to say about this subject. I feel the camera has taught me how to listen, which we often think we associate cameras and photography with our eyes. And in that way, I'm speaking of listening as in like paying full attention, paying closer attention, being focused at a deeper level to what's in front of you and around you and within. So listening with a camera, I coined that term when I was working on a project called We the People. I was doing a large scale portrait project with Kent State University. And we were photographing the refugee community of Northeast Ohio, which was an amazing group of 25 people, and then it turned into more people, 50 large scale portraits. And their stories are so profound and so transformative that they really are a testimony to resilience and just the strength of the human spirit. And I realized like this simple method I was doing, sitting across from them, just a few feet across from a person, and photographing them with the intention of really showing their humanity and hoping my photograph could be a bridge for other people to see themselves and see the humanity within this other person that they saw at the time potentially as very separate from themselves. So that process for me, I love to keep things simple. And prior to that, I'd worked in journalism for years in my 20s, and that really taught me to listen. So I carried that forward in a lot of ways. So that particular term, listening with the camera, came to me, I guess what I'm trying to say is during the making of that project. And I'm confusing it because that was 25 portraits, and then another project I did 50 portraits. So it was 25 people that I sat and received their stories. And I realized that they were very open because I wasn't their neighbor, I wasn't their parent, I wasn't their teacher, I wasn't anybody connected to them on a regular basis. I just showed up and I was this person with a camera here to see them and listen to them and receive their story. And so I just loved the term listening with a camera. I thought, this is what I've always done. This is what I want to do. This is literally all of my work can be under this umbrella. So that's sort of an answer, I suppose.
Well, what it made me curious for, Erin, was to hear how you receive a story. That just really struck me, the receiving of a story, and how oftentimes it can feel like the listening is taking notes about what people are saying. And the way you're talking about it is you take it into your heart and you're with them. Can you say more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a lot like the therapeutic process, like, or even what maybe friendship looks like at its best, or the lost art of friendship before we, I kind of feel like more people see therapists because there is less close relational listening going on, perhaps. So in a variety of contexts, in the best case scenario, there is somebody listening while the other person talks and not jumping to what they want to say in their head, but like you're in the receiving mode and you're empathetic and you're connected, and you're really just making yourself like an empty vessel to receive that person's story, whatever they want to say. And I feel like that in itself holds great potential for healing. And we see that, right, in the therapeutic setting as a big part of the healing component is just the sharing of stories and having someone there to receive you non-judgmentally. And in my case, I'm not judging or analyzing or anything, I'm receiving, but then I always end up in a state of awe about the person, and so I'm transformed, and then I'm acting also as a mirror of the person's beauty and power and just complete awesomeness and like strength and all the things that we don't see about ourselves. So that's part of the equation as well, is listening and mirroring so someone else can actually see themselves, both literally in my photograph and then also through our conversation.
And I'm in that remembrance of looking at those photographs that you did, the exhibition from Kent State, and how moved I felt in my own body system, in my heart. It just, it opened me up, and I just want to celebrate how you said you mirrored, and through your listening in the camera, I felt moved by, like, I could see some aspect of their story within the photograph. And so you did celebrate their awesomeness, and it touched me deeply, even though I had never met them. I felt like they were a part of who I am, and I could relate to them and feel resonant with them. So I know that, having known you and your work, how you do receive the story. And the other thing that brought up for me, well, two things. One is how we all have a story, and like you said, the awesomeness of our stories. It's so palpable.
Yes.
And I can remember moments where I sat on a porch in a rocking chair with family or neighbors, and we just sit and tell stories. And it could be the stories of the day, or it could be deep, heartfelt stories that opened up. And I would do that in the car with friends or my son, or on journeys. It's like the car is such a great vehicle for that too. I just thought of that in the moment. Yeah. So I'm in that listening with you, and I feel like I'm pulled into the story of you in this moment, and how you listen through the camera, with the camera, and through that mirroring. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. It is amazing what can be translated in a photograph, like what it can, like the essence of a person. And those particular photographs, I kept them very simple and really focused on connection in their eyes, and wanted to make sure the one that I chose in the editing process, their eyes were really speaking, of their story. And so when they're telling me their story, it's coming out of their eyes at certain points. So I learned a lot. I really learned a lot in that process, that I've, applied in different ways, both in like one-on-one sessions and leading others. I led a group of people, wonderful people at Athens Photo Project, in creating large-scale portraits of people in addiction recovery, in the addiction recovery community. And I took that listening to the camera and kind of offered it for other people to use that technique, and supported them in the process of making the photographs, and the same thing happened. So it is remarkable. I feel that it would be an incredible tool to use, like as an icebreaker at any retreat or convention or a college campus, when there's new students and you want them to connect. If you have people sitting a few feet across from each other, and they're supposed to, you give them a list of questions and you ask them to make a portrait of each other with their phone. And magic happens because connection is inevitable, right? So it is fun, and I just think the application, the possibility of listening with the camera is endless, really. And I'm seeing that again, I'm jumping back into journalism, which was something my husband and I had that on our bucket list. And so here we are in community journalism. And I have not worked full time in this industry in about 20 years. So it is the place where we are working is unique in that it may not have changed in 20 years. So the industry has progressed and everyone's doing video, and it's really kind of stressful and moves at a pace that I don't care to go. So I love working in a small town in a newspaper where we are using still photography and words. And I go out and I listen to people every week. And it's profound, and it's such an honor to be able to carry their stories to the community and hoping to build bridges between people and groups of people, and show them who, once again, being a mirror, showing them who they are, reminding them who they are. So, and we forget, don't we? I mean, we disconnect. We're very disconnected from ourselves in our. It takes a lot to survive these days. So we're busy, and we're, as moms, or if we're career people or whatever role we're playing, we have a lot of people meeting us. And so it's very rare we stop and listen to ourselves and see the beauty of our lives. So I photographed my friend who was a small farmer. And afterwards she said, when she saw the images, she said, I had no idea my life was so beautiful. And I can see that, right? So I see that from the get-go, but like you of course know we are programmed to have a negativity bias. So we see the things that aren't working, or we see the negative things often about our own lives or ourselves. So I feel like one of the gifts I offer people is to see and remind them how amazing they are.
And bring out to them who they really are, beyond all of those roles and the busyness of life, who they are as a being in connection with.
Yes.
Love that. I love that.
Yeah, and that's true about stories. We're not just one story. We become overly identified with one story, especially if we've experienced significant trauma, or at least that's the pattern I see, is that we often tell that story over and over again, and our identity is based on that one part of us. And I see human beings as a stained glass window, where each pane of glass is a story. And none of which should be dominating. All of them ideally would be synthesized into a unified whole that is us, and we're made of all these stories, and we can call upon them and remember them, but I feel like it gets out of balance sometimes when we're like overly identified in one part of us.
Yeah. And I had this image of the panes of glass, that each one might be a different color. There might be a clear one. There might be one that's one color. There might be multicolored ones. And I'm like, there's so many different ways of seeing who we are. And you slow people down and you give them a moment to see more what's possible. And for me, that's how being in conversation is. You're in a conversation with them to show them who they are, or open them up into who they are, so that they can dive a little deeper into it. That's amazing.
Definitely to remind people who we are or who they are, because it's really just a disconnect. I think we know who we are from the moment we get here. I just feel that my experience raising children especially taught me that people know, we know what we're here to do. We know who we are. We just have to, we need help remembering. So, and the back to the stained glass window image you're talking about, I too see that as a multicolored, all different panes, all different colorful pieces of glass, different shapes. And if you think about a stained glass window, the sun obviously moves throughout the day, so it's hitting and illuminating different panes of glass. But what if that sun was stuck and it just kept illuminating one pane every single day, all day? We wouldn't acknowledge the beauty of the entire thing or the other panes. And so that's how I see when something really, really hard happens to us, we often, that loop is created where that story is told within us and we're articulating that one story, and that's my identity. And in reality, all of the colorful pieces of glass are the identity.
Yeah, and I liked how you said the sun like passes through and reflects different aspects of it. And if it gets stuck, imagining it getting stuck, we only see that one aspect when we loop in that one story. But the sun doesn't ever stay in one place. It's always it's moving towards that next reflection, if you will, that next moment, and how it may sparkle in one moment and how it may like be a strong beam of energy in another. And it's totally different depending on the time of the day of how the intensity of it or not. I think that's amazing. It really draws me into to see myself through the sun on the multicolored window pane. That's amazing.
Yes.
I love that.
Well, and you think how each stained glass window is it is a story, right? If you think of the stained glass windows in the basilicas and the cathedrals, they're pieces of art, they're a story. One piece wouldn't tell us what it needed to tell us if we just saw like a piece of the foot of whoever that is, Saint whoever, right? Or Jesus, whoever that is. But we need all the pieces to tell the story. And so they're all useful. And so I see that as like all the stories that make us who we are useful to us in different ways at different times and useful to us in service of others. So if we are stuck, we're really not, I guess, maximizing our potential.
Mm. It made me think too. I had a yoga teacher that told a story to us one time. And he said, look up at the window in the room that we were in. And he said, you notice how there's a little bit of dust and dirt to some areas are really pretty dirty and you can't quite see through.
Right.
He said, imagine if that's your mind. And your mind is kind of dusty, like you're saying, the sun is only beaming through on one aspect of the window, of the stained glass window, and you can only see that one part. And he'd say, just imagine taking a squeegee and some water and just kind of clearing the window of your mind.
Yes.
And if you think of that from all those years ago, how not only is it the stained glass window and the sun reflecting and beaming and being a part of who we are, but it's within us, and we need to squeegee a little bit sometimes.
Yes, it's that purification process, I think, or paying attention to how we are, what is the health of our interior life, and I recently completed psychosynthesis coach training with the Psychospiritual Institute. And that has everything to do with, we call it disidentifying from the parts we are over-identified with, and then kind of identifying with all the other parts, like meeting we call them sub-personalities in psychosynthesis, but you're meeting all these other parts of yourself, right? And then you're inviting them all into this whole integrated synthesized version of you. And it is really an incredible process. So that kind of also plays into my stained glass window
Absolutely.
image here.
I love how you can weave the different experiences of how you are listening with a camera and how you're moving now in this integration through psychosynthesis exploration too. Do you find that there are ways in which the weaving of your own process has opened you up into a new way of seeing yourself?
Yes, definitely. I explored the world through my camera. I feel like my learning really began when I started school studying photojournalism and then started working as a photojournalist. And I was looking out at the world, at everybody, and studying humanity with my camera. And actually, my human design information that I've gotten recently really says that this is the pattern for my life, is like during this time of my life, and it was the exact amount of time, I am looking out and studying the world and learning through other people's stories while kind of giving them voice and listening with the camera. And then for a period of time, I turned the camera inward and explored through self-expression and more contemplative photography, and kind of slowed down and stopped looking out as much and got to know who I was. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm at the point now where I'm 52 and I've done both of those things with my camera in a variety of different ways. And so now I'm ready to bring that into give that form, what I have learned, that the camera and writing and visualization and all different things, how they've helped me and I've seen them help others, and bring them into my own method that I'm creating. That's kind of a combination of all of these things.
I can relate to the aspect of that bringing into form. I'm almost 62, so 10 more years of exploration was needed for me, maybe, but who knows? And I'm in that place of bringing the listening of the living body into form and how to invite others into their own listening through my practices as a somatic being. So I can definitely relate to that from like taking all those stained glass pieces, if you will, and seeing the different parts in the way I have paid attention in my own listening, through my body, through my connection to what moves me forward in life, and what has me kind of stop and listen deeper and know that this soul being has moves with what rises in the moment. Like you were saying, you stopped and really gave time in your own listening, just like you do with others. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's service not only of others, but of ourselves. And sometimes I think we kind of forget to be in service of ourselves and how we're moving through life, that I'm looking for that balance as well. And during these times that we're living in, it could be challenging, how we pay attention, not how much, but how we pay attention to living life's moments and fully expressing ourselves and being seen in our full expression too.
Right, definitely. Yeah, the past few years have been pretty intense, and I feel that, or I'm seeing that that period of time has called so many people into a deeper state of exploration with kind of the outcome being much more authenticity. Like even in my work as a journalist, I'm seeing so many stories now post-pandemic of amazing things that happened during that time about job changes, life changes, ideas being, brought into reality, books being written. We kind of see our COVID years as, and obviously a lot of very hard and traumatic things happened, a lot of loss, and I'm not in any way, I don't want to not acknowledge that, but that being said, it was this strange pause in life for a lot of people that we normally do not get in an adult life. And listening for how people use that time in their lives is really a fascinating study. And makes me feel like in a lot of ways we're better on this side of it. So that happened to me too. I slowed down during the shutdown and worked from home, spent a lot more time with my camera in nature. And then I had like a 6-month period where I left my job I was working in at the nonprofit you mentioned before I found that we were going to move here while I was kind of figuring out who am I. And so, I've been here almost a year now. So I would say that the past year and a half has been exceptionally transformative for me. I've explored it's almost been so much that I had to take the January and February of this year just to stop, like just to process like everything I've engaged in, everything I've explored, everything I've learned about myself, and just let myself be and let it all kind of integrate.
And I'm really appreciating how being in a listening can be like being in the pause, and how our country, our world was in a deep pause, and there's like, I don't know if I have the words, but it feels like two events simultaneously happening: the busyness of the world and the pause. And what did we as a country discover about ourselves, as much as what are we as individuals discovering? And for me, I'm looking at the different stories that I've seen. People are being willing to open themselves up into and invite connection again, and say connection is the most important. I've seen this a lot with the younger people that I've been around. It's almost as if that shift occurred to say, I want me in this. I think of any other words, but I want me in this experience of being in this world, and I want to know I'm a part of something that matters. And I know that you've explored listening with a camera from the point of view of social change too. And I feel like there's some kind of connection with the whatever is rising in wanting connection with social change. And I don't know if there's something you might say about that or not.
I'm kind of a middle of the road person, and that serves me well as a journalist. I usually am not taking sides. I usually can see both sides. And if I can't see both sides, I can love both sides of any polarized situation, group of people, whether it's religion or politics or anything. So I think that's what drives me is to create social change in the form or the currency of love of the other, to decrease othering, to bring people out of duality, into unity. I'm big on unity consciousness. I'm big on the human potential movement. I feel that there's so much possibility. I feel like human beings are containers of possibility, and that we get in our own way most of the time. And so connection, really, it's I'm driven to kind of be a conduit of connection through my work. And so that connection could be in a community setting in the world. It can be within an individual. Currently I'm working on creating workshops that really ask people to slow down and look through their camera and explore with the camera and writing, with the intent of reconnecting to like self, or the voice of their soul, and nature, and others in the group, other humans, and God or source, or whatever the person wants to call that. So that reconnection idea, and so social change, I feel like, has to start in the heart. And so my work, all of my work, is about it. I hope to impact the heart and open the heart through my work. And I did that as a teacher, as an adjunct at Kent State, and I was teaching photography. But someone recently told me, you've been teaching photography and you've been a photographer, but this has been all about spirituality all along. And like, that's in my birth chart, that's in my human design chart. So the camera is a tool for me.
Yeah. Like the body's a tool for me.
Yes.
Yeah. I get that. And, for me, the body as a tool is wherever I am, I'm exploring what I'm connected with, whether it's when I'm in nature, I'm exploring that connection. If I'm sitting on an airplane next to somebody and a conversation opens up, I'm exploring being in that connection with the moment. And it never ceases to amaze me, the awesomeness of people. It doesn't matter who it is. When I'm sitting next to them, a story opens up.
Yes.
And because I'm always in that what is rising moment. How am I tracking what is rising, and being curious. And I think that is, for me, my own way of listening, and that listening is through the body, whereas yours is listening with a camera. And the same awesomeness happens in building connections with each other, with nature. Sometimes it's that connection that I know we've heard it a million times. When you're walking down the street and you look at someone and you just smile, no matter who they are, there's a moment where your stained glass window meets theirs. And what is the story of those two stained glass moments? I mean, I love the conversation, how there's this kind of weaving of how we are who we are is simply to open up the story with one another. And we all do it in our unique way. And it's beautiful to be able to acknowledge and recognize how we all have different ways of being in story with one another. And that's the magic.
Yes. Last week I did an interview that is very much aligned with what we're talking about. And it was, I was interviewing a group of people, a playwright, who wrote a play about Alzheimer's, and he's a machinist during the day, and he's I call him the unlikely playwright, because he never thought he would write a play. So he wrote a play about one family's story, one family's journey with Alzheimer's, and everybody who ended up acting in the play had a close personal connection to a loved one who had Alzheimer's or dementia. So it turned into this. Really, it turned into drama therapy. And that was not the intention at all. But the beautiful thing is that it kind of pulls together what we're talking about in your work with the body, is that by what I'm told from these people is by playing these characters, it brought up stored emotions that they didn't know they had, grief that they hadn't processed, and they would have to take breaks in their rehearsals to let the emotions flow through them. And they all supported each other and they listened to each other's stories. And then on top of that, there was a facilitated conversation after each performance, and the audience members all shared their stories. And so all of these emotions were being processed and stories were being shared. And I'd never thought about drama therapy because I am a little bit too introverted to be on the stage. I like to be behind the camera. But it obviously, it's a fully embodied experience when you're playing a character, right? And so there, it's just, to me, it's an incredible way to process emotions and let them move through you, and to kind of be almost rebalanced after something like that, something traumatic like that happens. And that actually made me think about photography as well. And one thing that I feel like is very beneficial is there's a lot of movement involved in photography if you are out exploring nature with your camera, or you're in a photo walk, which I led teenagers at a Waldorf school in Italy on photo walks. We had a photography club after school, and we would explore the urban environment in Florence with our cameras, which was so visually rich. It was amazing. So, it's an example of like, if you're seeing something new, or you're seeing something beautiful and you're moving your body at the same time, and then when you look through the viewfinder, it's this little rectangle in your camera, everything else falls away. And to me, it's such a heightened state of focus that it is like, I think if somebody, I can't find any evidence that this has happened before in a scientific study, but if someone studied the brain of a photographer in action, I think we would find it's a lot like meditation, because it really is, you lose yourself in it. There's not a lot of self-awareness. You're really, really focused on what's right in front of you. And I find it also opens me when I'm photographing someone and I'm so focused on my viewfinder and seeing the light and seeing the composition and all the things that are required while I'm also listening. I'm pulled into a state that I often get downloads, and information comes through me like for the person I'm photographing, which is kind of a remarkable thing that we're not studying this, right? Because it is a tool, like Bessel van der Kolk, who I was researching Bessel van der Kolk and Gabor Mate when I was trying to figure out what is going on with the brain, the brain and addiction, right? And can it be rehabilitated? And because we had a lot of things going on in our town when I lived in Northeast Ohio. And so I was studying both of their work, and Bessel van der Kolk, what he said spoke to me, is that you have to bring someone into the present moment. That's what we have to do. That's the very first thing you have to do, is bring someone back into the present moment. And so that, I feel like the camera is an incredible tool for that.
I'm listening to how you speak about being with a camera, that your body is engaged, and that you are emotionally connected in the listening, and then you're receiving these downloads through the mind of it, that it's the whole system. Mm-hmm. And that whole system response, for me, that's what I think meditation is everything operating in the full spectrum of who we are. So I can relate to how you are in your meditation as to how I am if I'm doing body movement practices, if I'm doing seated meditation. Or for me right now, honestly, I feel like I'm just in this little tunnel world with you, in total listening and being with you. And so conversation for me is like meditation too. that we're just moving in our system with what's rising. And each moment, it just pings something new to pay attention to, whether it's a body sensation or an emotional response to your photos, or thinking about something that happened or how I engaged, that everything's present and I'm fully present and I feel you fully present too. And I think it's remarkable how the simplicity, like you said, I'm a pretty simply oriented person in my photography and stories. This moment feels like that simplicity. And I've had these moments with you many times where we just sit with a cup of tea and hey, what's up? And that's what today feels like for me, is kind of a reflection on that. I find it amazing and delicious.
Yes, it is. These are always soulfully nourishing conversations with you that I always end up being very grateful for. And we do often cover a lot of territory.
We do. We have a huge landscape.
Yes.
And it can get really colorful.
Yeah. I think both of us are. I'm aware that I am being recorded right now. So I'm being a little more cautious.
Oh my gosh. So I'm wondering if there's anything else that's rising that you're moving towards in your own life that that you'd want people to know about. Like, is there some interesting story, or is there some way in which you're curious about something new that you're paying attention to?
Sure. Well, one thing, a couple of things come up because I'm always exploring too many things at once. But one thing that really struck me recently was the concept of authenticity versus attachment or belonging. And this has been a theme throughout my life, and especially throughout the pandemic when I was watching people have to make choices about certain things. And that idea, it's from a Gabor Mate class I listened to recently. And I've never thought about it in those terms, but I did think about it as how much we compromise of ourselves, our authentic selves, in order to belong to our culture or society or family or whatever, or workplace, whatever it might be. And so what that does for me is I'm called to help people, guide people, partner with them maybe on alignment with their soul purpose, discovering what their soul purpose is, and figuring out how to align with that. Figuring out like, who am I and what am I here to do? Because I feel like when if a person discovers that and is willing to courageously step through that door, it decreases the likelihood of depression, because life becomes deeply meaningful and deeply purposeful. And you live in a state of expression and service. So really that's in my coaching, that is what I'm driven to do. And so that authenticity versus attachment, I like how he spoke of that.
I love the idea of partnering with someone to open themselves up into it, because sometimes I think the alternative is when we feel like we're alone on our journey, it's like falling off a cliff,
Yes.
you're like flailing around. And I think you're onto something here, that what's happening in these times is that we need each other, so we don't fall off a cliff and just flail around in space.
Yes. Yeah.
And falling off a cliff might feel like depression for a lot of us.
Yes. And also just sort of The word floundering comes to mind. You know how we kind of flounder when we don't know what, like follow your bliss, Joseph Campbell, right? That's talking about the same thing. But if we don't know what lights us up, how can we follow it? You know, so often it takes falling off a cliff to figure that out, but you might as well have someone with you, right? Who's helping you, who maybe has the parachute or something so you don't land so hard. But, you know, in psychosynthesis, which is, it is a really remarkable psychology of the soul started by Roberto Assagioli, he's Italian in the early 1900s, and it's something very old that's kind of coming to, I don't know, more of the mainstream conversation right now. He was a contemporary of Freud and Carl Jung, and so the way he and psychosynthesists see a client, view a client, is as the person, as if the person's already whole, right? They're showing up and they have an issue going on, but they are already whole and their soul knows all of the answers. They just are not able to connect to it. So our job in psychosynthesis is to really hold the flashlight as we walk down and hike down the trail to the place within them that the answers are stored, right? And it's a transpersonal thing and it's a personal thing. So there's information in both places, right?
Yeah. And you know, for me, in its simplicity, that sounds like what we would say in our community is being with one another, being with another in the field, giving them a soft place to land when they need it, and simply supporting the idea that there are ways in which we're always in our self-study, and this notion of everything has a place, everyone has a place, and how we are with one another helps us know that every part of us is part of the integrated whole.
Yes.
We, and we as humans are a part of the integrative whole, connected to our planet, connected to our cosmos, that we are never not connected, really. And we just lose sight of it, like you said. And so I think whether you're a therapist or a best friend or a stranger on the pathway, all are potentials and possibilities for remembering that you are a part of everyone and everyone's a part of you.
Yes, and also that all the parts are welcome and honored and important, right? So even the parts of us that have been harmed, or even the parts of us that are angry, you know, or even the things we don't like about ourselves, those are valuable and they are welcome. So I've been holding, we chose a transpersonal image, and mine was a circle in the training I was doing, and that's been my symbol for this year, and kind of giving form to my work that I want to do, that I plan to do. And it's a circle because I'm envisioning creating a space, whether it's a literal space like in a building, or it's a mobile space, or it's at the park, wherever it is, but creating a space where all the parts of myself are welcome and all the parts of my community are welcome. So I've seen a lot of retreat centers and a lot of places that are one religion or one way or one method, or, you know, they're separate. They're a separate part of the whole. And so my vision is like, you know, where can a Quaker and a Buddhist and a Catholic and an atheist, and I mean everybody, where can like the postmaster and the doctor, you know, and the baker in town, like where can everybody feel welcome, right? To be their authentic selves. And so that's my circle. My image is a circle to
Yeah.
be something like that. And then for me is that I have a very, there's just a lot of parts of me that I've kept separate because I haven't figured out how to fit them together until now. And I feel like a lot of people, a lot of women are experiencing this where, you know, I know a woman who is, her background is Catholicism, and she left that for a long time, and she went through something very traumatic and healed through studying with shamanic practitioners, and now she does that work herself. And all of a sudden, I see that she's offering something that's like a combination of both. It's like the Virgin Mary and shamanic work, right? All in one workshop. So I do feel like there's a lot coming together for a lot of people, including me.
You know, this always happens for us. We have about 4 minutes,
Okay.
and we're always opening up into the next of the
Yes.
conversation. And we could just go on for hours and hours, as we have done.
Yes.
And yet we're in a time zone here with others. And so we're in that closing moment. And the one thing that that popped in is the huge pondering of this conversation. Who am I? And what am I here to do? And being authentic and happy in that authenticity. Is that not what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think that's what everybody needs. I think it's the prescription for our time.
A prescription for our time. Oh my gosh. You know, we've got like maybe 3 minutes left. And I want to express in the last few minutes how my heart is just open. How being with you, I don't get to be with you in person like I used to. Well, I'll have to work on that. And just hearing how I've always loved how your way of being with people helps me to be more open and more curious and more interested in how I am with people. And so I always feel uplifted in being in your presence. And I thank you so much for coming and sharing who you are and how you live authentically in your relationship to you and in relationship through the lens of your camera. I'm just so grateful. Any last words before we end today's conversation?
Well, I thank you. Thank you for inviting me into conversation today. And as usual, it's been a rich and nourishing experience. And through the years, I've learned a lot from you, and you have been a person who has reminded me who I am and to continue on my path. So I appreciate that immensely.
Thank you. Thank you. So for everyone who's listening, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being in the conversation. We feel you with us, and we look forward to more conversations. Create a World every Friday, someone new to share in conversation.